Hello guys, welcome to the Code Angle YouTube channel. Before I get started on today's tutorial, I would like to say a very big thank you to everyone out there for watching and subscribing and getting me to 1,000 subscribers. I really appreciate it, and big ups to you guys. Keep on watching and recommending my videos to other developers out there. I appreciate you as you do that. Thank you very much. So today we'll be making use of React and Contentful to create a blog application. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with what React is all about. React is a front-end open source library used to create web applications. On the other hand, maybe some of us are not familiar with Contentful, so let me just give you a brief overview of what Contentful is all about. So as you can see on the page, this is contentful.com. Contentful is a content management system that allows us to manage and create content in a well-structured and organized format. Contentful has various features such as provision of RESTful APIs, which allows us to have a full programmatic control over our content. It also has features such as microservices architecture. It is also compatible with most languages and frameworks out there through the use of SDKs. And also Contentful is optimized for speed through its content delivery networks. It helps to deliver API at a very fast speed. If you don't have an account, you need to create an account to follow along with the tutorial. I already did that, and if I head straight to my dashboard, you can see that this is my account. So all you need to do is just to create an account. You can do that by using your Gmail account. There's that option in the sign up page. So what Contentful does is to provide you with a space. So this space is where we are able to configure our content model and then structure it in the way we want before we are able to have access to it via the API system Contentful provides in the front end, that is in our React project. So quickly, let's get started with that. So I'm going to click on this green button over here that says design your content model. So once I click on that, we'll get directed to a modal that says create a content type. I click on that as well. So we need to give our content type a name, but what we are trying to build is a blog. So I'm going to type in blog, and then I don't need to provide a description. I don't think we need that. So I'm just going to click on create, and then the next modal says we should add our fields. So before I proceed, I just want to give us a brief overview of how our blog is going to be like. If you head to my personal blog, which is thecodeangle.com/blog, you can see the blogs I have here. So our model is going to follow this format. That is, each blog post is going to have a blog image, it's going to have a blog title, as well as a date, and then a blog summary. Then on the next page, which is the read more, once I click on the read more, then we have the blog details. So this is the format of what we are going to build. This is what it's going to look like. So I believe that gives us an idea of how we need to structure our model. So heading back to the Contentful dashboard, the first field we want to add here is going to be the title. So the title is going to be a short text. So I'm going to click on this text, and then it's already selecting the short text. We have two options when it comes to text. We have the short text and the long text. So we need to provide a name for the short text. So I'm going to call this blog title. Then I'm going to click on create. So I'm going to add more fields. So the next field I'm going to add is the blog image. The blog image is going to be a media. So I'm going to click on media, and then I'm going to type the name of the field, which is going to be blog image, just like we have on the screen. And I'm going to select one file. We don't need many files for this, so I'm going to click on create. So the next field we're going to create now is a blog summary. So the blog summary is going to be a short text as well. So I'm going to type in blog summary, click on create. So I'm going to add another field called create date. That is the date is being created. So that's created date rather. So that's going to come in form of a time, date and time. We can see that right here. So I'm going to type in created date and then click on create. Then the next field we're going to create is the blog author. This is going to be in form of a short text also. So blog author, click on create, and then we click on the add fields to click on publish. Publish is going to be in form of a yes or no option, which is a boolean. So I'm going to type in publish and then click on create. The final field we want to create is called the post content. So this is going to be in form of text, but it's going to be a long text. So I'm going to type in blog, or rather post content. So that's all we need to do. So I'm going to click on create and then click on save. Then we get the success message that says content type saved successfully. I'm going to close that. Then I want us to look at these tabs we have here. We have the fields, which which are 7. And then we have the JSON preview tab. This is the format we're going to follow on the front end to deliver the content of our application on the page. We can just take a brief look at this. We'll look at it in depth later on. Integrate the Contentful API in our React application. So I'm going to click on content next. So in the content, I'm going to click on the add blog button, and we are provided with this one that says create and edit an entry. So I'm going to click on that, and then we can get started. As you can see, all the fields we created in our content model is structured right here, and the UI is really neat and straightforward. So as you can see, we have the blog title, the blog image, the blog summary, the created dates, as well as the blog author, the publish, and then the post content. So to save time, I'm just going to head straight to my own personal blog, thecodeangle.com, and then grab the details of some blog posts I've created. So right here, I'm going to grab this blog title, which says top 10 date speakers in React, and then I head back to the dashboard. So I paste it in the blog title. Then the next one is the blog image. For the blog image, I'm going to click on add media, then add new media. Then I scroll down and click on open file selector. So I'm going to click on the select files to upload. So yeah, I'm going to select a random image. Probably we can just go with this. So I'm going to click on open, and then once it's fully uploaded, I'm going to click on publish, and then I click on this icon over here that allows me to go back to our editor. We now have our image. The next one is the blog summary. So the blog summary, I'm just going to grab a short text, probably just from here to here, and then copy that, paste that in the summary. The summary only allows 266 characters, so that's too much. So I'm gonna take some away. I think we're good to go with that. Then the next one is the created date. I'm just gonna select a random date, probably Sunday, May 29, 2022. And then the blog author, I'm just gonna type the sugar, and then publish, I'm gonna select yes. Then before we finally have the post content, so I'm just gonna grab as much post content as I can. So I think this is enough. So I head back to the editor and then paste it in. So I think that's all we need to do once we have this fully configured. So I'm just going to click on publish, and then we can head back to our content page, and inside of our content page we can see we already have this post that we created. So what I'm going to do now is to create 5 more posts. So I'm going to click on add blog. Inside of the add blog, we get directed to our editor once more, and then we have the same fields we filled earlier, that is the blog title, image, summary, created as blog author, publish, and post content. So I don't want to show you how I'm going to create this because I still have 5 more to create. So I'll just skip this part. As you can see from the Contentful dashboard, we have 5 different blog posts. Anytime you want to edit it, all you have to do is just to click on any of them. They get directed back to the editor, and in the editor you can make any edits you want, and then you can just click on, probably once you make a change, you can just click on publish changes, and the changes is going to get published, and then you can always head back to your dashboard to view all the posts you've published. So as you can see, we have the appropriate heading. So now what we need to do next is to create our React application and then consume the JSON API the Contentful platform provides for us. So what I'm going to do is to open up my terminal, and in my terminal I already created a React application. I create it using the create React app. So with the command on the screen below, that is npm init react-app, and then I call the React project react-content, I'm able to create a React project easily through the Create React app. So if you don't have it installed, you can just search for Create React app on Google, and then you can follow the instructions on the website. Since I already have the app created, I don't need to run the command. All I need to do is just to head to my code editor, which is Visual Studio Code, and inside of my code editor, I already have some boilerplates generated for me. First thing I want to do is to clear all the boilerplate generated for me. So I'm going to grab everything inside of this div and then clear it off. The next thing is to create my React component. So I'm going to have 2 components. The first component is going to be the component that lists all the blogs we have available, and then the second component is going to be the blog details of each specific blog. So quickly, inside of my src, I'm going to create a folder called blog, and inside of blog, the first component I'm going to create is going to be called blog lists.js, while the second component I'm going to be creating is going to be called single blog, or probably let's call it blog details.js, and then I'm going to press enter. So we can just generate boilerplate template for this by typing in the command refce and then press enter, and then same thing can be applied to the block details, rfce. These are shortcuts provided by the extension called ES7 React Redux, React Native, blah blah blah. So you can just install this particular plugin. So moving on, the next thing we need to do is to set up our components inside of the app.js file, and to do that we need to install the React router. So to install the React router, I'm going to head straight to the terminal once more, and then I'm going to type in npm install react-router-dom and then press enter. So if you are not aware, React Router DOM recently created a new update. So we currently have React Router version 6. So that's what we're going to be using for this project. So this project is up to date with the most recent features of React Router DOM. So while that is installing, we can just head straight to our project and then import the components we create. So the first one is the blog list. So I can just do import the name of the blog, which is blog list, the name of the component rather, which is blog list, from ./blog, that is the blog folder, /blog list. Then I'm just going to copy this down using shift and alt, then the down arrow key. So I'm going to replace the blog list with blog details. So this is going to be details, and this is going to be blog details as well. And then inside of the return, I need to import some things from React Router DOM. Let me see if it has been fully installed. As you can see, React Router DOM is fully installed in our project. To confirm that, we can check our package.json file, and if you check on line 11, the React Router DOM will have version 6, like I said, which is the latest version. So we need to bring in some things from React Router DOM. So I'm going to type in import. So the first thing I'm going to bring in is the browser router. So I'm going to bring in browser router, and I'm going to import it as router because the browser router is quite a mouthful. And then the next one is going to be the routes, and then finally we bring in routes with an S. All this is coming from, as we all know, react-router-dom. So inside of the return, we're going to create the first tag of what we imported, which is the router. Inside of the router, we're going to have the routes, and then finally we're going to have the route. The route is where we are going to configure each route we created for each of the components. So the first route is going to be having a path, and inside of the path, we're going to have /blog details, and then we have /:id. The reason why we're having :id for the blog details because each particular blog is going to have its own ID, which we are going to access. So this would enable us get the details of each particular blog. So the next thing is to type in elements, and then we call the component this blog details is referring to, which is blog details components. In the previous version of React Router, I think version 5 downwards, the element is not what we use. We use components instead of elements here, so you need to take note of that. So for the blog list, the part is going to be called blog list, and then the component is, that is the element, is going to be called blog list. And then our base URL, we can just set that up as well. So our base URL is also going to be the blog list component. I think we are good to go with that. So I'm going to save and then run the server with npm start to see if our implementation is correct and if we don't have any form of errors. For some reason we're having a blank page, so I'm going to right click and click on the inspect option, and then on the console we have an error that says functions are not valid as a React child. This may happen if you return a component instead of components. Okay, I think I know what the error is. So I'm used to the previous versions of React Router. So these blog details and blog lists components are not properly imported in the elements property. So I'm gonna give them the tag. So I'm gonna save, and hopefully we get the blog lists in our UI. Yeah, awesome. As you can see, we have a blog list here. So this is the very first step in implementing Contentful service into our React project. So the next thing is to design the blog list component. So I'm gonna close the index, the app.js file. So in the blog list, I'm gonna grab this HTML tags and then paste it right in here. So this is just a design, a layout of how our blog is going to be like. So I don't want to spend much time on showing the design of the blog list. I just want to focus on integrating the APIs from Contentful and then displaying it in the front end. So you guys have to bear with me on that. So what we just have is a h1, that is an header tag that has a web dev blog text. And then we have the image, which we can see here is just a random image. We've not implemented anything. Then we have the blog title, the blog author, then the date, then we have the blog details or summary, and then we have the read more button, just like we have in the content model we created in Contentful. So I'm gonna change this link to button for now. So this is gonna be button. This is so we can avoid any form of errors. So I'm gonna remove these two. And then when I save and add to the browser, we can see this looks like it looks as close as the sample I have on my blog right here. So we are trying to follow this format we have right here. The reason why this is well structured is because I already have the CSS configured as well. If I head straight to my projects and then in the index.css, I already have the CSS, and all this will be available for you in the GitHub repo, which would be linked in the description box. So feel free to check that out. And if you want to follow along with this tutorial, you can just head to the GitHub repo, grab the CSS, paste it into this index.css file, and then you are good to go. Moving on, inside of the blog list, the next step we need to do is to install Contentful. To do that, I'm going to open the terminal once more, stop the server, and then run the command npm install Contentful, and then press enter. So while Contentful is being installed, I'm going to head straight to the Contentful dashboard. Inside of Contentful, I click on the settings drop down, and then I click on API keys, and then I click on the add API key button. So the add API button takes us to a new page, which you can see here. We can see the space ID, which we're going to use in our project, and then we have two access token. We have the content delivery API and then the content preview API. The one you want to use is the content delivery API access token. So I'm going to grab both of them now, but before that, let me see if the installation is complete. As you can see, the installation is complete, so we can move on with that. So to configure the space ID and the access token, I need to import something from called create client from Contentful. So I'm going to import create client from Contentful, and then we need to configure this inside of our application. To configure it, I'm going to create a new variable called client. So I'm going to say const client is equals to, then I'm going to call the create client we import right above, and it's going to have an object, and inside of this object we're going to have what we call a space, and this space is going to take in the space ID we have in our dashboard. So I'm going to copy this space ID, head back to my code editor and paste it in. Then the second parameter we have here is the access token. So I type in access token, and then I head back to the Contentful dashboard, and then I grab the content delivery access token. Remember, we are not using the preview API, so I'm going to paste this in as well. I'm going to bring in two hooks in React. The first one is useEffect, the useEffect hook, and then the useState hook. This is going to help us to manage our data the way we want. So because we want to get the data coming from the backend, and we already have our create client method set up, the first variable, I'm going to create a variable that has a setter and a getter. So the first one is going to be called blog posts, and then the second one is going to be called set blog posts. We're going to set the state we want them to be in. So using the useState hook, it's going to be an empty array at the initial stage. So the next thing we want to do is to call the useEffect hook. So I'm going to type in useEffect. Inside of the useEffect hook, we're going to have an arrow function right here, and probably an empty dependency injection to prevent the app from reloading as much as it wants to. Here we're going to create another function called get all entries. So I'm going to create a functional variable called get all entries. Is equals to, so this is going to be an asynchronous call, so I'm going to make use of the async keyword. So async, open a bracket, and then make use of the arrow function, and then I'm going to call this get all entries functions at the end, so that it gets implemented once the page loads. Inside of this get all entries functions, I'm going to make use of a try catch block. So I'm going to open a bracket, try, and then after the try, then we have a catch to help us catch any form of error we might encounter in the course of building this application. So I can just console log this error. So inside of the catch block, where we implement how we want to get our data, so I'm going to make use of the await keyword. We already have async, so why not use await? So I'm going to say await client, which is what the variable we created right above. So client dot, so the client gives us so many methods like get assets, get content type, get entries, get entries. So for this project, we're going to make use of two methods. in the blog list where we want to get all the blogs we created on the back end, that is a list of all the blogs, we're going to make use of the get entries. While in the second part, that is the second component, where we want to get a specific blog detail, we're going to make use of the get entry method. So for now, I'm going to click on get entries to turn a promise. So I'm going to subscribe or chain to that promise by making use of the .then method. So I'm going to type in a variable there called entries, and then make use of an arrow, and probably let's log these entries to the console and see what we have before setting it in our state. So I'm going to type in entries, and then I save, head straight to my browser, and in my browser I'm gonna open the inspect elements once more and head straight to the console to see if we have any data in there. Wow, okay, we haven't started our server, so quickly let me start the server by running npm start. So once more, npm start generates a new page for us, so I need to click on inspect once more and then head straight to the console, and inside of the console we have an object which we console logged in line 14. So when I open this object, we have a list of items. The first one is the includes object, but what we want to really look at is the items array. That's where our data lies. So I'm going to open the items array. As you can see, we have 5 items which are all created in this content. If you see the content we created, it contains data concerning these 5 blog posts we created. So once I head back to my React project and then I click on the first one, you can see in the fields we have a blog title, a blog summary, a post content created, basically all the content model we created in our Contentful dashboard. As you can see here, blog title, image, summary, created that. So we have access to it right here in our front end, which is awesome. So now we can integrate it into our React projects by mapping through this array. So we head back to our project, and then we need to set the data, that is the entries data, in state. So I'm going to call the set blog post, and then I pass in the entries data we logged in the console. So this makes it accessible to the blog post getter we have here. So what I can do is, because of the power of JSX, I can just look through this within our HTML. So we need to look through this within the section tag. So I'm gonna, to make it clear, I'm gonna just create some space here. So we need to open some brackets right here. So the first bracket I'm gonna open, I'm gonna paste in the blog posts, and then I'm gonna be making use of optional chaining, because optional chaining provides a safe way of accessing data, especially data coming from REST API, asynchronous data. So it helps us to avoid a lot of errors. So I'm going to put in a question mark right here. So the question mark there is called optional chaining. So I'm going to do blog post.items, because our data is inside of the items array. So I'm going to map through the array, because one of the array methods available to us in JavaScript is map, and which is what we need right here. So I'm going to create a variable called post, and then make use of an arrow function. So I'm going to cut this closing bracket and wrap it around the section tag. Now we can now start displaying this data we have in our console right inside of our section tag. So to prevent React from freaking out, we need to make use of a key. So I'm going to type in key is equals to, we need to pass in something unique. So I'm going to make use of something called an ID. Precisely, that is what one of the ideal way of dealing with this, because IDs are usually unique. So if I head back to my results, you can see this SYS, it has an ID, and each of these IDs are unique for each object. So I'm going to grab the SYS and then pass in the ID. Just as you can see here, the IDs are different. So back in my code editor, I'm going to pass in post.sys.id. So that will be the key that handles the errors that come from React. It allows React to know that each item is unique. So the first thing we need to do is to configure the image. So I'm going to clear this SRC we have right here, and then make use of a bracket instead. So I'm going to pass in post.blogimage.fields.url. You should know I'm not typing this off the top of my head, because when you head straight to the object, if you see fields, then the blog image is within a fields object, and inside the fields objects we have file, and inside of the file we have this URL which contains the blog image, which is exactly what we did in our project. So I guess that's quite deep. So an alt text, what we can pass in the alt text is probably maybe field.title, because that's quite unique. So I can just pass post dot fields dot title. I think that's enough. So the next thing we want to do is the block title. So I'm just gonna grab what we have here in the alt tag, alt attribute rather. So I'm just gonna paste it right in the block title. So the next thing we need to do is to grab for the blog author. So the blog author here, I'm just gonna say post those fields dots. I think when I check this object, it's blog author. So I'm just gonna grab that to make sure the spellings are correct. So paste in blog author. So the next one is the date. So I'm gonna paste the date here as well. So the date is within the fields object as well. So I'm gonna type in, instead of title, I'm going to have created date. So next thing we need is the summary. So to get the summary, I scroll down a bit. So I just replace, instead of all this static text, I'm just gonna replace with it post.field.block summary. I think that's all we need to do. So let me save and let's see how this looks on the front end to see if we have all the items we have on our backend. So once the app compiles, as you can see, we have all the item, but our image is not displaying for some reason. We have the date, we have the created by, that is the blog author, everything but the blog image. So let me head back and see our image attributes. The src attributes probably made an error somewhere. As you can see, I have blog dot fields dot blog image dot fields dot file. Okay, I forgot to include the file. So dot file dot url. So let me save once more and see if we now have it displaying properly. Awesome, it displays properly now. So as you can see, we have our data showing on the page. All the 5 blocks is now coming from the Contentful service through the API it provides for us. So the final thing we need to do is to get details for each particular blog post. That is, if I click on the read more button, I want to get details of this particular blog and read more about it. To do that, we need to make use of the power of React router. So what I would do is to head straight to our project, and then so instead of the button tag, so I'm going to replace button with link, which is imported from React router DOM. So if I go to the top of the page, as you can see, we have link imported, so we won't have any error. So where are we linking to? We need to configure that as well. So I'm going to open a pair of quotes, or probably we're going to make use of a bracket rather. Instead of brackets, we're going to have the blog URL. So I'm going to make use of backticks because the blog details has a route ID. As you can see in the app.js, this ID, we need to pass an ID here, and the ID we'll be passing is the system ID, that is the SYS ID, which is unique to each particular blog post. So I'm going to head back to blog list, and inside of the blog list, I'm going to say, let me grab this. I'm gonna grab these blog details to make sure the routes are correct, and then for the ID, I'm gonna open a $sign and then pass in post.sys.id. So I'm gonna save that, and then we head back to the browser and click on one of the blog posts to see what that does. So let me click on this. As you can see down on the bottom left, you can see the route is already configured. So when I click on that, we have the blog details page. So now the data for that blog details page can be gotten from the URL. That is, we grab the ID for this URL, we'll be able to get the details for this particular blog page. So to do that, we need to head straight to the blog details page. The design is similar to what we have in the blog list component. So I'm gonna grab everything we have right here and then copy it, head to the blog details page, and then paste it in. So we just need to make use of some minor configuration. So one of the minor configurations we need to do is to get rid of the read more button, because we don't need to read more here. Instead of the web dev blog we have here, we can just have a link. So I'm just say link because I want to link back to the home page. So we can just have a link, replace this with link, and then inside of the text we can just have blog post. We make use of the to property. So where are we linking back to? We're linking back to the blog list page. So I'm gonna say /blog list. So I think that should do. Now we need to configure our contentful service on the blog details page as well. So I'm gonna head back to the blog list page and then grab the create client and paste it right here. So we have create client, and then I'm gonna grab the configuration here as well. That is the variable we have here. So I'm gonna paste it within our blog details component. So the next thing we need to grab is the useEffect hooks and the useState hook. So we grab that, paste it here. Then finally, we need inside of the React Router DOM, we need something called useParams. The useParams method in React Router DOM will enable us access the ID. So what do I mean by this? So let me create a variable. So inside of this variable, I'm going to make use of object destructuring by making use of the brackets, and then I'm going to say equals to use params function. So if I console log this ID, the result is going to be the ID we have on the browser of our page. So what do I mean by this? So once I save and I refresh and I open the inspect button, oh, we're going to run into some trouble because a lot of what we have here, like the blog posts and all, are not available to us. So what we can do is just, for the sake of sanity, just comment this. I just want us to quickly see the ID we are grabbing to see that it exists. Inside of the console, you can see we have an ID called 2h, like the ID we have on the URL right here is what we have here. So to test that once more, let me grab another blog post, probably this particular one. Let me refresh. As you can see, we have the same route URL. So before I proceed, I notice our blog title is not showing. So probably we're not calling that properly as well. So quickly let me head back to the blog list page and check the blog title. Okay, it's blog title and not title. I made a mistake. So I'm gonna replace title with blog title. So we just replace it in two places. The first place is the alt text we have in the image, and the second place is in the h2 tag. So I'm gonna save and then head back to the browser. As you can see, we now have the blog title. Perfect. So let's go complete our blog list details page. So to continue our implementation, we need a use effect in this page as well. So to configure the use effect, we need to create it. So I'm gonna create a use effect hook, just like we did in our previous component. It's gonna have a dependency injection as well, and then instead of the use effects, we're gonna create a variable, a functional variable called get entry by id. So I'm gonna have get entry by id is equals to an asynchronous function. So I sync an arrow as well as a bracket. So inside of here, we're gonna make use of the try catch block. So try and then catch to catch our errors. So passing the error, log the error to the console, and within our try, we're gonna do the same thing we did in the blog list. So let me just grab, to make this faster, let me grab just what we have here. I'm gonna paste it in the blog details. So what we're gonna change here is the get entries. So instead of get entries, we're gonna have get entry. So this get entry method has to take in an ID. So I'm gonna grab this ID we created and we got from our useParams method from React Router. So now I'm gonna paste in the ID, and then we don't have any variables created here to grab the details. So I'm gonna create a setter and a getter. So the first one is gonna be single blog post, and then the second variable is gonna be called set single blog posts. So all this will be set using the useState hook, and the initial value will be an empty array. Inside of the methods we create inside of the useEffect, so I'm gonna replace the blog post with single blog post. I'm gonna pass in the entries. So I guess we're having an error, so we need to fix this by wrapping the brackets the way it should be. So now the error has disappeared. So as you can see, we need to call this get entry by id just right outside of the function variable. It allows us to render this once the page loads, and our sync variable should also have a bracket as well. So with this, if I console log the single blog post in the console, so how do I do that? Console.log single blog post, and I save. We should have data for this particular post with this ID. So as you can see, we have an object with the fields, and the fields has all the details for that particular blog post. As you can see, the blog author, the blog image, summary, blog title, just what we have in the previous component, that is the blog list component, but this time it's just unique to a particular blog. Let's implement this into our application, then this blog details component. So to do that, I'm going to uncomment everything I did here. We're not going to make use of the map because it's coming in form of an object and not an array. Objects don't make use of the map method, only arrays. So I'm going to remove the brackets, and then I'm going to replace what we have, that is the posts. I'm going to replace the post with single blog post, So the single blog post is going to have optional chaining as well. So I'm just going to use optional chaining for the results we have here and then here as well. So we're going to use optional chaining for the title as well. I'm going to use it for the title we have here. Basically all our results. So let's just quickly implement that. So right down here, this is no longer going to be blog summary. We need the full blog post content. So it's going to be blog post content. So I'm going to grab post content and then paste in post content. So every single one has been replaced with the single blog post object. So if I save, I believe we should have everything displaying properly on the page. So let me save and head back to the browser. Hopefully we'll not have any errors. So post is not defined. I guess one of them is not replaced on line 39. So let's check line 39. So as you can see, we didn't replace, oh, we don't need the key anymore. So I'm just going to take away the key because we're not looping through anything anymore. We just have objects. So let's save and see. As you can see, let me close the console. As you can see, the details of that particular blog post is showing on the page. So if I go back to the main page, and for this particular blog post, Angular versus React versus Vue, getting started, once I click on that, we should have more details about this. As you can see, we have more details. If I go back and do the same for another blog post as well, we should have more details. So with this, we are good to go, and we fully implemented a fully functional blog managed in the backend by Contentful and then consumed through an API in the front end using React. So that's it for this video. If you like what you see, make sure you like as well as subscribe, and if possible, click on the notification bell as well so you get notified anytime I create a new content. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Cheers and God bless.